I'm Selena, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be doing my August wrap-up, sort of on time-ish. Let's just get right into it. I have some stats here that I'm just going to tell you. I only had 1 5-star this month. I had 5 4-stars, and I had 3 3-stars. So again, not a month where I got a ton of new favorites. As for genres, I read quite a mix of genres. There were 4 fantasy books, 1 sci-fi, 1 literary fiction, 1 graphic novel, and 2 comics, or comic collections or something, I don't know. As for age ranges, most of the things I read were adult, with 5 things. I read 1 YA thing, 1 middle grade thing, and 2 that were, I'm gonna call a young reader. And so yeah, that's a total of 9 things. 2 of the things were comic anthologies, 1 was a graphic novel, and 6 were novels. Probably my least favorite of the month was She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. So what this book is about this girl named Ju. Well, her name's something else. Her brother is given the prophecy of greatness, and she's given the prophecy of nothing. But when their father is killed at a raid, the brother, Ju, the real Ju Chongba, expires as well. And so the sister takes the brother's identity and becomes Ju Chongba. And so Ju is taken by some monks and then is later drafted for war. And this is a retelling of, or like a historic alternate history of the rise of the Ming Dynasty, and Ju is like the first leader of the Ming Dynasty. But this is before that. This is Ju's like rise, basically. And I didn't love this. I thought it was a bit boring for me, a bit slow for my tastes. It wasn't bad, it just wasn't for me. And this is a adult historical fantasy, but the fantasy is really mostly an alternate history, and there's a few things. There's like little hints of magic here and there, I think, but they could also be interpreted a bit differently, I think. But yeah, so She Who Became the Sun, it wasn't really for me because it was very slow, very, very dense, very historical. I think if you are someone who likes really dense military historical fiction, that's pretty literary, it's not super like plot driven or action driven, it's much more, it's like literary and slow and subtle, then I think that you could like this, but that's not really my taste, so I gave it 3 stars. I really liked one of the characters, so the main character, Ju. I really liked her and her perspectives. I thought it was such an interesting idea and take on gender, and there was a lot of interesting conversations happening with that perspective, and so if the whole book had just been that, I might have liked it a bit more. But we also have another perspective whose name I don't remember, but this person is on the other side of the war that Ju is fighting in, and so I found all those perspectives way less interesting, and so there was like half of the story that I was invested in or more invested in, and one that I just wasn't. I also thought Ju's story was much more interesting when she was still posing at the convent of monks, and once Ju leaves that and we leave part 1, we go into war, the story becomes a lot less interesting to me. I think the writing was beautiful, very literary. I think that the writing style, the prose was very interesting, but it just was not enough to save the book for me and get it more than 3 stars. The second 3-star that I read this month, I guess it's gonna have to be The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. This I read at the very tail end of the month, and it wasn't my favorite. So this is a middle grade about a girl who drinks the moon. It's actually about a older woman who is a witch who lives in the forest, and she lives kind of sort of near this town that always every year sacrifices 1 baby, the youngest in the year, to the witch. This town believes that this witch needs to be appeased and she wants their babies. And this witch doesn't really know why they do this. She's a very benevolent witch, but basically what she does when they give the babies, she's like, they don't want these babies, I'll find someone else who does. She feeds them starlight and she gives them to a loving home. One time though, she gives a baby moonlight on accident, and moonlight is pure magic. It makes someone very volatile, and so basically what this book is this witch dealing with a volatile kid whose magic threatens to destroy her and those around her, but we also are dealing with the conflict of the town that is giving up their babies, and how there might be more going on there. And really, this book is a very plot-driven book, and I think that was really its downfall for me, because I think it tried to do too much. Like, I think if this was a more character relationship focused book with the part of the book that was about the witch and the girl who drank the moon, and Luna is her name, and the other characters of the swamp, then I think I would have liked this more, because I really didn't think Luna had much of a personality at all, and I didn't think that her relationships with them were very good. I really think that this was supposed to be a fairy tale, and so it didn't dive into characterization at all with these characters. But what's weird about that is this is a pretty long book for a middle grade. It's like 300 pages or something. And it has other characters that have characterization, like the Mad Woman. There's a villain, some villains, the witch herself, but Luna has none. And therefore, she doesn't really have complex relationships with anyone around her. And so I think that was a big flaw for me with this book, the character work. And then the plot, it was trying to do too much. Like I said, we're dealing with Luna's magic and what to do about that, and the witch's past, and whatever's going on at this town. It's just too much for 300 pages. It pulled it off, like it resolved all those plots, but it wasn't good. Like it didn't do it well in my opinion. And the thing with the witch as well, there are really emotional moments for her in this book, and none of them hit. Same with Luna, because Luna is so emotionless, like in her, like her character has nothing. She's not meant to be an emotionless character, but because her character work is literally nothing, all of the emotional moments we're supposed to feel through her eyes are like, they do not hit at all. They fall flat. And so I really just think the character work and the overextension of plot and all the plots it tried to have really were the downfall of this book for me. And I just didn't really like this. It wasn't my favorite middle grade. I was expecting to love it because I love whimsical middle grade, but this just did not do it for me. And the final 3-star I'm going to talk about really quickly, and that's just the Beast Boy graphic novel. This is the sequel to Raven, which I read earlier in the year. My friend Ray got me both of these. She recently got me Beast Boy for my birthday. I continued on. I like this more than Raven because I felt like Beast Boy was a lot more relatable than Raven, and he was just a more fun character to follow, and his powers were interesting. They're still fun graphic novel series, and I'm excited to see how it goes when Beast Boy and Raven actually meet each other. So if you're a fan of the Teen Titans, I do recommend these, especially if you have a young reader in your life. This is YA, by the way. It's not the young reader books. Okay, so I think the 4-star I'm gonna go to first is actually going to be The Lost World by Michael Crichton. So this is the sequel of Jurassic Park. I finally read it. I did actually finish this a little bit in September, but I'm concluding it in August because I'm not going to wait a whole month to talk about it. I have thoughts now. But this is the sequel to Jurassic Park, which I loved early in the year. I will link my review of it. I wanted to do a full review with this book, but I just don't think I have enough to say. This was a 3.75, low 4-star for me because it just wasn't as good as Jurassic Park. It didn't have the same magic as the Jurassic Park book. I think the thing that fell flat in this one for me was we aren't at the setting of Jurassic Park, and I think the science of Jurassic Park and the setting and the themes it allows are a lot better than what The Lost World allowed. And I also think that the characters in Jurassic Park, characters are not Michael Crichton's strong suit in either of these books, but I enjoyed following those characters more in Jurassic Park. I felt like they had more personality, they were more different, and their struggles just made sense. Where in this book, a lot of what was going on didn't necessarily make sense. It almost felt like Michael Crichton tried to make lightning strike twice. And Jurassic Park is just wonderful, but The Lost World I could see was trying to be as much like the Jurassic Park as possible without being another Jurassic Park. Because we aren't at the park setting, but we are at a setting with like an island infested with dinosaurs. And so we do sort of have conflicts with that. We have conflicts with the T-Rexes, and there was like a few good scenes of action in there, but there wasn't a lot. There were the classic villains trying to steal something, like steal data from the island. We had that in Jurassic Park. There's the 2 kids that are sort of wreaking havoc on the island, just aren't supposed to be there, but they find themselves there anyway. We had that in Jurassic Park already. Malcolm's sort of dry wit and observations, we had that already. And then it's felt like Michael Crichton just brought a woman in because he wanted to have a woman, just like he did with Jurassic Park. We already had the over-enthusiastic scientist who doesn't care about anyone but himself for his research. We had that in Jurassic Park, and it was done way better than in Jurassic World. We already had, finally, the more paternalistic scientist person who is kind of the main character of Jurassic Park. We had him in this one too. So it was just... It felt like all the characters and tropes Michael Crichton was trying to do again, but it didn't pull off as well because it wasn't Jurassic Park. It's just not. It's not gonna be. And so I think I was a little bit disappointed with this one, pretty disappointed with this one, because I don't think the characters were as well done. I don't think the plot was as well done. This was very slow. That's the other thing. This is like 100 pages longer than Jurassic Park, and I think about as many of those pages could be cut out. Jurassic Park was immediately interesting, and even if we took a bit to get into the action, there was always something happening. We always had plot happening in Jurassic Park and atmosphere building, and The Lost World just didn't really have any of that. It had setup for plot, basically. It had getting to the island for half the book, and I just didn't find that interesting at all. So really, The Lost World was not my thing. I didn't really love it as much as I did Jurassic Park. I'm glad I read it, but I do have more criticisms than I wanted to with this one. The other 4 stars I read, the first one, actually I'm gonna talk about the first the two young reader comic books I read. So I read Strange Planet and Stranger Planet by Nathan W. Pyle. These are just collections of comics. You can follow Nathan on Instagram and you can see pretty much everything in these books. He just compiles the comics that he posts on Instagram into books about these beings, which are basically aliens that speak differently than us and have basically the same world and the same very human tendencies, but they say things in a very blunt way that sort of makes you realize more about yourself as a human and your practices or your habits. And so it's very, very cute, very, very sweet, very funny, adorable. Highly recommend these. They're witty, they're funny, they are introspective, they're just cute. Moving on to the final 2 4 stars. The first one I'm actually going to talk about, this is the literary fiction that I read, and that is Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. I enjoyed this book. This was a 4 star. I don't have too much to say about it though. It's not a new favorite. I gave it a 4 star because I think it's really well written, but this is also a very subtle book. I was expecting something different when I went into this book because I'd seen so many people talk about the twists and the plot and the character moments, the scandal, and it really was not that. For me, it just was not that. There was definitely things that this book was trying to talk about, things this book was trying to say. It did all of them in a very, 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 very subtle way. The drama and the scandals that the people talked about with this book, I didn't find to be there for most of the time. It was mainly just normal everyday interactions and the racism that pervades them. It wasn't a ton of like crazy dramatic stuff. And I think that works for this book because in everyday life, racism is not something that is always dramatic and in your face. It can be something in a very subtle interaction. And I think that that's really where the genius of this book comes in. It presents everything in a very subtle, everyday way because that's a form that racism takes. And it's very, very common for well-meaning people to perpetuate that form of it. And that's really what this book is. It's about a Black babysitter who, when she is babysitting her like white child, she babysits and she's babysitting her very late. She takes her to a store. She gets harassed by this like basically mall cop. I don't really know what else to call him. And it is videotaped and it causes kind of a whole mess and everything. After we really just follow the interactions of the babysitter Amira and her employer afterwards, and how they are tense and everything with that. You are in Amira's head. You are in her thinking about her life as a 20-something-year-old, where she wants her life to go, why she is still in this babysitting job, what she likes about it, what she doesn't, her relationship with her boss comes in a little bit, her relationship with this new guy she's seeing, and then how everything, all of her sort of plot ties in with the past of her babysitter, Alex or something. She pronounces her name really weird. It's like Alex or something, I don't know. But she is like this white wasp mom who, she has these 2 kids, and she hires a babysitter to take care of one of them most of the time because she doesn't have the time to deal with it, apparently. She's writing a book. She's an influencer. She likes things a certain way, and she tries to overcompensate with Amira after this situation with the cop sort of stopping her. And you sort of watch them and their relationships and how their kind of individual lives intertwine and get messy. And that's really all I want to say about this. It's very subtle. It's not super crazy and dramatic, but it was good. It had a lot of things to say. It had a lot of things to go over. I think that the relationship with Amira and, what's her name, Briar, the girl she babysits, is sweet and adorable. And there's even commentary there on their relationship versus Alix's, it sounds like Elixir. Alix's relationship with her kids and the favoritism she shows and stuff. So it tackles a lot of themes. And so I enjoyed this, but it wasn't a new favorite. I do recommend it if this is your kind of book. I felt like I really needed a palette cleanser because I've been reading a lot of fantasy and sci-fi this year. And I love fantasy and sci-fi, but I wanted something more realistic and easy to read. And this was perfect for that. It did its job. did what I needed to do. The final 4-star I'm going to go over is Theft of Swords by Michael J. Sullivan. This is my first Michael J. Sullivan book, and I really enjoyed it. It's actually 2 books in one. It used to be self-published, and the first and second book in the 6-book series are sort of bound up in this. So we have the first one, which is called The Crown Conspiracy, which introduces you to this crime committing fun duo that calls themselves Rhaeria. And Rhaeria is made up of Royce and Hadrian. Royce is kind of the like moody, sulky one, and Hadrian's like the fun-loving, like sarcastic, fun one. And so they together are very close friends, they're best friends, they have a wonderful friendship, and you watch them as they take on kind of odd jobs for like well-paying nobles or basically whoever needs some dirty work done for them, they will usually do it. That may sound like a really dark crime fantasy book, but it's really not. This is very much a swashbuckling, fun fantasy with great friendship at the center of it, and that is really the core of this book. And so the first one in this, The Crown Conspiracy, which is my favorite of the two, I gave this one like specifically like a 4.25 stars. Royce and Hadrian are they're framed during one of their jobs for the murder of a king. And so they go on the run with a motley crew, which was very fun, and they don't really know who to trust. They don't know who organized this whole thing, and they're trying to find out, and then eventually sort of they get involved in putting things right. And this was very fun, lots of interesting characters, a very good introduction to this world. I really, really enjoyed it. And then the second one, Avanpartha, I didn't enjoy quite as much. It took me a lot longer to read. I read the first one in a few days, and then the second one I read over the course of a few weeks, I think. I kind of put it down for a bit. But Avanpartha is about when Royce and Hadrian go to help this woman who says that her town is being devastated by a beast that comes out at night and burns their houses, takes humans, eats them, all sorts of things. And so this town is also on the edge of like the old border between the elves lands and the human lands, and there is this elven tower there called Avanpartha where the beast seems to be coming from. And so we watch Royce and Hadrian sort of go and try and help this town the best they can. I did like this book too. I gave it more like a 3.75 stars, so the whole book rounded out to 4. I really had fun with this. I think that it was especially swashbuckling, definitely. I think the characters, Royce and Hadrian, are both really fun to follow. They have a really great friendship that I enjoyed watching. The biggest criticism I have is in the second book, and I do think the second book falls into some sort of sexist sort of fantasy writing. I'm not saying that you're sexist if you like this book or the author is definitely sexist. That's not what I'm saying. But I definitely do think there were some things that were said a certain way or scenes that were executed certain ways that I was like, did we have to do that with it? Like, did we have to like marginalize the women in the story even more? But that's my main thing. Overall, I really enjoyed a lot of these characters and these plots, and I'm really, really excited to get into the rest of this series and this world because Michael J. Sullivan has a ton of books. He has a new book come out, and I'm really, really excited to see more of his work because I really, really enjoyed this. We did not have any 4.5-star books this month, but we did have one 5-star, and that book is Peter Darling by Austen Chant. This was so good. I don't want to go on about it too much because a review is either coming out in a few days or is already out. And I did it with my lovely boyfriend Mason, who this is one of his favorite books ever, and he loves it. He is the one who recommended it to me and let me borrow it, and so he's the reason I'm reading this. And so I needed to have him on with the review. So if you want to hear both of our thoughts, I will send you that. Really what this is, it's a like Peter Pan retelling where Peter Pan is trans. His dead name is Wendy Darling. And so we really follow Peter as he is returning to Neverland as a grown man and trying to pick back up this rivalry that he had with Captain Hook. But as an adult, he and Hook are both adults, a romance ensues. Don't get me wrong, this is not a romance book. This does have a romance in it, but this is really more of a character study of Peter. As someone who enjoyed the original story, but, you know, it has its problems, I think that Austen Chant worked with this story beautifully and did so many natural sort of interpretations of the story that just lended themselves perfectly to a story like this. It was masterfully written. I cannot tell you a flaw about the book. I might be able to think of one if I really brainstormed, but really this book I thought was just executed masterfully, exactly the way Austen Chant wanted it to. has so many important themes of self and identity and who you project to others and who others project onto you and escape from reality. And there's just so much. There's just so much. The lies we tell ourselves. Oh, so many things. I think that this book is so beautifully written, relatable, just wonderful, just wonderful. And I highly recommend it. This immediately made it to like top 3 books of the year. And I'm sure I will be talking about it constantly on my channel because this book is amazing. Anyways, that was the books that I read in August. I will see you next time in a new video. Let me know what your favorite book you read in August was, and let me know if you want to pick up Peter Darling, because I totally recommend it. All right. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.